its computer. Okay. So, welcome to How's It Going? Evaluating and analyzing your program's performance. And so my name is Chelsi Conaway, and I serve as the Executive Director of the Human Services Alliance of Greater Prince William here in Manassas, Virginia. And we serve Manassas Park, and Prince William County. And so in this training, we're going to look at different ways that you will be able to check the wellness of your program, assess the data that you have, what you've collected and what you've learned from it, and then determine where improvements can be made to your program and to your project. So just a quick overview of the Alliance. We are a 501c3 nonprofit membership-based organization of human services providers in this area. And so what we do is we provide people with training, we provide different networking events, we do some grant making for local nonprofits and all kinds of other really fun things just to help people improve their programs and make them the best that they can be. And so because we are a membership-based organization, if you would like to join us, you can learn how to join us by visiting alliancegpw.org/join. Memberships for an individual or a family unit are $50 annually, and it's from 12-month period to 12-month period. And then if you wanted to join as an organization, it's $100 annually. So now let's do a quick overview of the program planning process. We have a prior workshop to this called Programs That Work that goes over this process in a more in-depth manner and goes over it quite a bit. And so with that one, you can find that on our YouTube, and we will email it to you along with the materials if you'd like to refer back to it. In that training, we go over the 5 different stages of the results-oriented management and accountability cycle. This is a formal cycle for program planning, and I am a nationally certified ROMA trainer, ROMA being results-oriented management and accountability. So it starts with assessment, assessing what it is that your community needs and what your organization has in terms of resources to address those needs. It goes then to planning. So you're going to actually plan what it is that you're going to do to help people based on what it is your organization's mission is, and then any data that you might have that can support that planning that you're going to be doing. And then with implementation, it's actually the next stage in which you implement the different things that you've planned to do. As you are implementing, you will begin to achieve results. And so with that, you are going to make sure that you are observing and reporting on the progress of those results. And then we get to my favorite, which is going to be the evaluation stage. And within this cycle, this is the stage that we're going to be focusing on today. So we're not going to get into assessment, planning, implementation, or achievement of results quite as much. But all of these different phases really do pour back into each other, which is why you might notice that this cycle never ends. It just goes right back into doing an assessment after you have completed your evaluation, and then you plan to do something different if something different is required. Okay, so just a quick thing to refer back to our assessment stage that I wanted to make sure I pointed out, which is that to be useful, data must be analyzed. So one of the things that you have to do in evaluation is analyze your data. And so in order to analyze it, you have to have it. And so make sure that you are just checking to see all the different data points that you're going to need to make sure that you can make informed decisions about your evaluation process. Just make sure that you have done a thorough assessment as you're going through the implementation part of your project. And so you can look to see different data points that you can collect from the census, from the Community Commons website. It might be geographical data that you'd like to collect. It might be based on income. It might be based on race or gender or age or any number of things. But one of the things that you have to make sure that you're doing in your program planning and development and then evaluation is collecting that data. So something else that you want to do is conduct a SWOT analysis. And SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It's probably something that you've heard in other forms of organizational development, that you have to do a SWOT analysis. But as you are assessing not only what the needs are of your organization and of your program participants and of your project, also assess kind of what is going on environmentally. So that might be economically, what's going on with your regional planning that's happening, what's going on politically in terms of legislation that might be coming about, in terms of any legal or court rulings that might be coming down, even environmentally, in terms of things like, if you're planning a project and there's going to be construction going on, you really can't take any of these different factors too lightly in your consideration, because all of them could potentially be really impactful in terms of the outcome and achieving the outcomes that you want to achieve with your programs. And so one of the things that you have to do as you are first starting to do your evaluation is really think about who you are as an organization. What is your goal as an agency? What is it that you are trying to accomplish? And, how does that really fit back into your overall mission and vision and your values? And so one thing that you want to always be cautious of is you want to be cautious of mission drift. And what mission drift is, whenever you say, I'm founding this organization to this, I'm going to create this organization to do this, or I'm going to create this program to do that. And then, maybe you hear about a grant opportunity that might kind of possibly be a good fit, or maybe there's a philanthropy somewhere that's doing something that seems pretty cool, but maybe, it's not quite a perfect fit, or it's not even all a super close fit. And then you find that you start to drift your mission to fit that funding source or that opportunity, or, that grant. And so one thing that you want to make sure is that you're always taking your evaluation and your planning back to this, back to what it is you said you would be doing, what you're supposed to be doing. So now one thing that when you're thinking about as it pertains to the implementation phase of your evaluation is that you can be somewhat flexible in doing that. And when you're looking back and you're saying, okay, we need to evaluate how things are going, how we're doing, make sure that you're checking in with your stakeholders regularly. Make sure that when you are actually in the execution phase of your work, that you can make adjustments if necessary, that you can kind of just see what's going on and taking an overview of how things are going. We named this workshop, How's It Going? Because this is your chance to share how things are going. And you want to make sure that you can be flexible and that you can document things that may have happened, good or bad, that you maybe didn't even expect to happen. And then two, take lots of pictures. Sometimes pictures will tell a story that your data otherwise may not tell. So when you're having events, when you're having program engagements, community engagements, take a picture to see who's coming out, who's in that picture, who's participating, who looks happy to be there, who looks miserable. Those pictures really can tell you quite a bit. So when we talk about the achievement of results, just to go over that little quick aspect of the cycle, and like I said, the other program that we did, the program planning workshop, does a much deeper dive on these issues. But before you even start, make sure that your team and all of the different parties that are going to be participating, whether that's your community partners, your board members, that everyone really understands what the goal is, what data has to be collected, and what tools are going to be used to track that data. There's nothing worse than when you would like to go and do an evaluation and kind of start to analyze what's been going on with your project to find out that the people who are supposed to be implementing it had no idea what information they were supposed to be collecting. So make sure that you do that. Make sure that you have some regularly scheduled frequency in which you're going to collect information, you're going to collect reports, you're going to get what you need from these programs so that you can be judging it on an established basis, whether that's having a monthly report, an annual report that you collect, or a quarterly report, or even a weekly report for some of the work that you might do. And then what you want to make sure that you do is compare the action steps with the progress that you've been making. If you thought, maybe we could have 50 people that we serve, and then you find, well, actually, it's not going to be 50, it's going to be closer to 5. That's something that you want to know, and you're only going to know that once you start to collect that data. All right, let's get into evaluation. So all of this is going to be useful information to you. Figures, facts, stories, quantitative data, as well as qualitative data. When we talk about qualitative data that is quality. That's data that's going to help you to understand the story, the words, the feelings behind what your program did and what your project did. When we talk about quantitative data, those are the facts and figures. Who showed up? How many people showed up? How many people achieved the outcomes that you wanted them to achieve? It's really important that when you are going through your programming cycle, that you don't neglect the evaluation stage. So many individuals, so many groups will neglect this stage, but it's really important because it helps us to make decisions. If we've made a mistake, if we've had an issue that maybe didn't quite turn out how we wanted it to turn out, it helps us to keep that from happening again. And so it really just kind of helps us. You can't have too much information as it pertains to this stuff. You just want to take your time and go through it all. And then ideally, what we'll do is if you've done a thorough enough evaluation process, it's going to help you to save resources, to know where to invest your resources, to let you know maybe what changes you should be making in your program, if there are any changes, and then to let you know too, if you have something to celebrate, if you've met your goals. Sometimes we think about evaluation in the sense of it being something that's negative or something that could potentially be detrimental to the morale of your team. But if you have an evaluation process that is thorough and you find that your program has been implemented as designed and worked out in a really great way, there's nothing better than seeing that on paper. All right, so now we're going to go over some questions you asked during your evaluation period. And so I'm going to share this document that I'm going to be sending to you, and it is called Questions to Ask During Your Evaluation Period. It's pretty straightforward. Okay, so first of all, did we do what we thought we would do? If you have a program that is designed to, let's say, feed children in a certain school district, first thing you want to ask yourself is that what you actually did? Maybe you fed children from another school district. Maybe other kids came to the school, or maybe it wasn't children at all. Maybe there were adults that came to benefit from your services. Maybe, who knows what? Did you even do what you thought you were going to do? This is something that you'll have this list sent to you so you can go through it and ask yourself these questions as it pertains to your organization, and even think about some questions that you'd like to add yourself. Did you serve the population that you thought you would serve? Who did you plan to serve? Who actually came? When you talk about, did you make an impact on the identified needs? So maybe if you have a program that's going to be providing childcare, because you've identified that childcare is this really crucial need to employment support, for your program participants, is that actually what providing childcare did for them? Did it help them because you identified, childcare as a need for employment support? Did it help people to maintain or obtain employment? Does it have the impact that you desired for it to have? Sometimes we can be making a lot of outputs in which we are taking a lot of activities, we're making a lot of moves, we're doing a lot in terms of action. And then we find out some weeks or months or years or even decades later that the actions that we're taking are not necessarily having the impact that we would like for them to have. And so it's really important to go back and then judge what the impact is versus what it is that you're trying to identify need-wise and address. Okay, so then something else you want to ask is, can you tell what services or set of services produce the best opportunity for results? So when you're doing your program, you might have a few different things that you are doing as part of your overall service delivery. And it's going to be really important for you to know which of those services and which aspects of those services are being most effective to help to get you where you'd like to be. Some are probably going to be a little bit more effective than others. And that can help you to know which of those different services you may need to discard. Okay, so number 5, are some populations achieving outcomes at different rates than others? So you might find that even within your pool of program participants that some are thriving and others might be struggling. And so that's something that it's going to help you to know what are some other underlying reasons as to why some of your folks might be doing better than other folks. The more you can communicate with your program participants to see what's going on in their lives, see how they're experiencing your program, see whatever feedback they may have for you, all of that is going to be helpful in terms of you developing your programs even further. And then something else that you want to see is, did you recruit and enroll sufficient numbers to allow you to achieve your target outcomes? So like I said, maybe you've got a goal of serving 50 people. Realistically, when we talk about service delivery for all the different types of work that we do, you might recruit 50 people to join, like, let's say a GED program, for example. That doesn't mean that all 50 of the people you recruited are going to successfully complete that program. We all have very busy lives. A lot of things happen. Sometimes people have different challenges and experiences. So maybe even though you recruited 50 people, there may only be 45 that are going to complete the program. And so what number do you have to recruit to get all 50 people through? So maybe you have to actually recruit 75 people with the understanding that you're going to have some folks that don't go all the way through your program. So you want to ask yourself, did we recruit enough people? Do we need additional resources? So additional resources, a lot of times people are going to think that that means money. Sometimes it means staffing resources. Sometimes it means space resources. Sometimes it might mean something else entirely. Maybe you need volunteer resources, or maybe you need educational resources, or maybe your team needs to be trained a little bit better on something else or differently. Maybe not even better, just differently. Was there something unexpected that influenced your outcomes? So you want to ask yourself with this, okay, we planned for 50 kids to come to our summer camp, and there was another summer camp across the street. And so we didn't expect that. However, that really influenced the outcomes of how many kids came to our camp. There are any number of things. One thing that we saw firsthand over the last couple of years is how the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted our work. We plan to do a lot of really great things, and who would think that our entire world might change over the course of a week or two? We're suddenly needing to do things virtually and socially distanced. What was something unexpected that may have influenced the outcomes of your services? Another question you want to ask yourself is, what services produce the outcomes and results? So within your program and within the work that you do, it might just be that the other programs and projects that you offer and services that you offer are support, and they are helping to gird up what it is you're doing, but it's actually only one or two services that produce the outcomes. So was it one service? Was it more than one? Was it a bundled service unit where maybe you had, if you come to summer camp, we will also feed you? Or if you come and register for our GED class, we will also give you a stipend for childcare for your job. It just kind of depends to see which ones are producing the outcomes. And if you were to separate one of those services from another, you might find that your program's outcomes don't really get to where you need for them to be. So something else you want to ask yourself is, how can you track the multiple services connected to each customer? So maybe you have program participants that are engaged in, let's say you're going to teach them literacy. And in addition to you doing a literacy service for them where you're teaching them how to read or how to be better readers, you also have a service in which you're teaching them how to find jobs, or you're teaching them how to do financial management, or whatever that might look like. It's really important that you be able to track, okay, we enrolled 50 people in our literacy program. Of that 50, we also did a co-enrollment in which we had 40 doing financial management classes, and then we had this many more doing work support classes. Be sure that you are tracking what all you are doing whenever you are providing multiple services, so that you can see what the best combination of services are to offer. What's the best combination to offer? You want to know who achieved these results. And I'm going to clean up these numbering for you because we got a little off, but this is a subcategory of this question, which is, what are the demographics of the people who achieved these results? Did they all come from one neighborhood? Were they all one income level? Were they all from the same elementary school? What does that look like? Because that's going to tell you quite a bit about the outcomes of your work. And then something else to think about is for the individuals who achieved one outcome, did they achieve any others? And how many people achieve multiple outcomes? In a lot of different programs, you can actually count those outcomes separately and you can count those outcomes twice. So if you registered someone to do work support, and then they also happen to be going through your financial literacy management, that's one person that you did work support for and one person that you did financial literacy for. Even if it's the same person, you did multiple things for them, and a lot of different funders will allow you to count that more than one time. Definitely check with your funders first to be sure. So something else you want to think about is what data do you want to collect that you haven't collected before? So maybe you've gone through a full program cycle and you were collecting information about their demographics, but you didn't collect information about their experience. So then you want to go through and say, next time, let's make sure that we do a customer satisfaction survey. Or if we have a summer camp, let's ask kids what they want to do for next year's camp. Anything like that might be able to help you in making your program the best that it can be. Something else that you want to do is find out, do you need to gather data from additional people? So maybe if you using that same summer camp example, if you have a summer camp and you've asked the parents, hey, what did you think about the camp? And they're like, yeah, it was cool. And you ask the kids, hey kids, what did you think about the camp? Yeah, it was all right. You even need to ask the teachers, ask the camp counselors, hey, what are areas that you see where we can strengthen this program? Make sure that you're gathering it from all the different stakeholders and all the different people that might be involved with your project. For number 18, the question is, to achieve our mission, what are the service areas that increase the likelihood of customer success? So this is a pretty high level question in terms of, if our mission is to, let's say, take people out of poverty, what services are tried and true? And it doesn't even have to be something that you're looking at exclusively for your organization, but even just a best practice. What services do we know will help to lift people out of poverty? Or if you want to make sure that, educationally kids are doing better in their math classes, how can you do that? There are so many different folks who have done this, have studied this, have done research on this, and written white papers on this, and journal entries in different industries, to where you don't have to fully go back to the drawing board to create this yourself. You really can rely on expertise of others and people who have put in a lot of money to study these things. But then compare that against what it is you're actually doing and what it is you plan to do. So when you're thinking about your mission is that high level ultimate outcome that you would like to see in your community. But it really is up to you to vary how you get that done, what different strategies you might use in terms of achieving your program objectives. So something else you can look at is what the trends are in service delivery. So you might find that there are some trends and there are some organizations that can be really, really innovative and cutting edge and on board with things that are really something you maybe never thought about before. And so what is trending? What is something that may be a trend, but maybe you don't think is sustainable? You might find that it's not wise for you to judge every trend equally, because there might be some trends that are going to be short-lived in terms of delivering service. But if you just kind of know, it's going to help you to keep abreast of what's going on in the work that you do. So for number 20, here's a question. Given our agency size and level of resources, what agency goals should we aim to achieve in the next 3 program years? So the next 3 program years, calendar-wise, depending on what your organization's program cycle is, whether it's something where you go from July to June, or if you go from January to December, you might be looking at a span of up to 5 years over the course of a calendar. Or it might be something where you're looking at, a shortened period of time. Look at what your resources are going to have to be, what it is that you plan to have 3 years from now, 5 years from now. What can you forecast? So maybe with where you are now, if you want to scale up to get something else, then that's something that, you should be thinking about now. Maybe you don't need to scale up. Maybe you need to scale down. Really think about what it is you have as an organizational goal that's going to help you in achieving your program goal. So something else that you want to think about is what types of performance management systems should be implemented to assure greater accountability. So a lot of times the success of our programs is less based on the people even than the systems that we have in place, the processes that we have in place. There are some projects and some programs that allow for a lot of flexibility and they allow for a lot more improvisation. But for the most part, the success of your program is going to be in terms of how well you can document your processes and systems. That's where you're going to find that your programs become most sustainable. And so you need to know, do you have those things documented? The last thing that you want is to invest a whole bunch of time and money and energy and training resources and recruitment dollars into getting in a really awesome teammate who's going to be wonderful at managing this program. And then should something happen where they have to relocate or they retire or they're unable to do their work, all of the institutional knowledge that you had for your program is going to walk out the door with them. So something that you always want to make sure that you are assessing is, do you have suitable performance management systems? And if not, how can you start to develop them? And what you want, the ultimate goal that you should have as you're documenting these things is, could a stranger off the street who has a modicum of knowledge of your service area come in and take over your program and keep it in the road, hold it in the road, keep things going afloat, and keep your program achieving the objectives that you have? Your program should not be tied to any one individual being able to deliver it. It really should be based on your agency's goals, your organization's goals, and what your mission is as a whole. And so if you have a program or a project that is tied to one really, really awesome volunteer or one super employee being able to lead it, who knows how everything runs, then you've got some work to do in that area. And so something else that you should think about when you're evaluating the success of your program and how things are going is, have you given your program participants the opportunity to express their most urgent unfulfilled needs? That might look like doing something like a survey or having a focus group. And all of those events can be really fun. They don't have to be skiffy and gross and yucky and overly formal. You can just kind of ask them, hey, let's have a pizza night and tell me, what are your most unfulfilled needs? And then see if that's something that your program can address, if that's something you want to address, if that's something that maybe you are already addressing in some other department or some other project that you might have, and if you can make those connections. But you're never going to know unless you give them the opportunity to express that need. And then you want to ask yourself, are we actually fulfilling those needs? So these questions seem repetitive, but they're actually really different, and they are really, really crucial to your work. So not only do you take a moment to ask your program participants what their most urgent unfulfilled needs are, but you also need to ask yourself, are we addressing those needs? Can we address those needs? Are we doing it successfully? The last thing you want is for someone to come to your project, to your program, and say, I have this burning need for X. And then you put forth years worth of interventions, you put forth a whole bunch of money in direct services, you go out of your way to help your folks just to find that, oh, we didn't actually address any of the really urgent needs that they told us about. So this is for your program participants and this is for you. Something else that you have to ask yourself, what should your organizational structure look like for you to be more agile and better able to respond to internal and external threats? So this is a tough question for organizations sometimes, because sometimes we become really, really attached to how our organizations are structured. But realistically, it might be the case where your entire organization needs to be restructured. So it might be something where you have to redesign your department. Maybe you need to restructure who is reporting to whom. You might have to downsize your staff. You might have to go out and recruit more people to come in to run your team. It's just something you really have to look at without emotion attached to it to see what does our organization need to look like for us to be successful. So your next question is, what would a decentralized what would our organization look like if it were decentralized, and what would be more effective in moving the agency forward? So like I said, you don't necessarily always want to have one person or one team that is holding all of the knowledge in terms of how a program looks like. So once you have decentralized that department or that team, you have multiple people who are working on, addressing some aspect of your service delivery. What does that look like? Do people need to be cross-trained? Do people need to have succession plans? The answer for that is yes, yes, and of course. And so that's something that you want to take into consideration. How many people need to be trained on how to do that? Is it something where you want everyone in your staff to be trained to a degree? Some organizations have found that, maybe it's not that everyone has to know how to deliver a service that requires a lot of customized knowledge or an area of expertise, but maybe they want everybody to know how to direct people when they come to the organization, how to schedule an appointment. Or maybe you just want to be able to serve people in terms of there being a no wrong door entry type of process, where if maybe you came for childcare, but we see that you've expressed a need for workforce development, so I know how to then connect you with the case manager that does workforce development. Maybe that's what that looks like, where everyone has the ability to schedule appointments on one another's calendars. It just depends for your organization, for your team, what would be a good fit in that regard. So then something else you want to think about is, who is your competition and what are they doing differently to brand and market their services? So if you find that there is another organization that is going to be providing workforce development training, they're also doing certifications, they're also doing upskilling, all the great things that you're doing, or at least really, really similar to what you're doing. Look at what they're doing differently to brand and market their services and which groups they're attracting. Because it's probably going to be the case that they may not necessarily be attracting the same audience that you're attracting. So that might look like something where maybe they're marketing in a different language than you've been marketing in, or maybe they have different people on their team who are attracting a more diverse clientele, or perhaps they're utilizing social media in a way that you haven't been. Whatever the case might be, if you look at this, you can see how they're branding and marketing their services, and then see if that's something you want to adopt or something that you think maybe you're doing a better job of it than they are. But look to see who your competition is. When we say competition, we don't mean that in any type of negative way, in terms of there being a negative connotation to the idea of competition, which kind of can harken to thoughts of there being a scarcity of resources that you're competing for, but more so competition in terms of, if I'm a program participant and I can go to the workforce development agency on the left side of the street or the one that's on the right side of the street, what's going to make me go to yours? And so that's what we mean by competition. Not a bad thing, just a difference in how we do things. Okay, so the next question is, who should your target customers be and how are they identified? So it's going to be really important when you are evaluating your work and your programs and your projects, that you think about who is your ideal program participant, who is the avatar of who you would like to serve. If you know that you've done a ton of research on maybe single mothers who are between the age of 19 and 22. Okay, where do those people hang out? How can you market to them? Is that who's actually been coming to your projects? And you have events, when you come to offer services, who's coming to benefit from that? If you don't know who your ideal program participant is, you won't know when you have effectively reached them or not. And then what should your strategy be to attract customers in need? So your program participants who maybe need, this really specific service done that only you can do, make sure that you are going through and you're seeing what you can do as it pertains to community engagement and marketing and advertising, and that you're adequately resourced to do those things. And if you have any questions about that, we have another training that we will send out when we send out this email and its resources. that really teaches you how to do effective community engagement and outreach for your program. So we hope that you would refer to that. Again, that is on the Alliance's YouTube page. You can just find that by going to youtube.com and then searching for the Human Services Alliance of Greater Prince William. So when you think about what are some best practices that private and public organizations may have implemented to attract their target customers, best practices in terms of not only, like we were saying earlier, where there are certain scientific studies that might have been done, professional studies that might have been done, but also just the fact that, there are for-profit groups that are doing a really awesome job of serving your same clientele that you can borrow from and that you can take inspiration from and that you can model some of your service delivery from. I was working with a food group once and they were doing food distribution for a food pantry, and they said that they modeled how they delivered food to the people who came to their food pantry based off of Chick-fil-A. And if you've ever been to Chick-fil-A, you know that they are ridiculously efficient and they might have a line that is wrapped around the block, but you're going to get through that line really, really quickly because they've got teams that work in certain ways. And while you're in line, certain people might be bringing things to your car, and certain people might have you to pull up to the window. So no matter where you are, you can probably find either a for-profit group that is doing something that you can borrow some inspiration from, or if you are a for-profit group, you can probably find a nonprofit group that's doing something that you can take inspiration from as well. So something else that you'd like to think about is what your program elements are that constitute an organization of excellence and which organizations are modeling this excellence. So in your mind, when you think about an organization or a project or a program that is just top-notch, just the cream de la creme, what does that look like to you? What are they doing? How are they doing it? How are they being just most effective, most efficient? How are they just, kicking butt and taking names? And then what groups are doing that? Maybe that looks like a really, really happy staff. Maybe that's how you would judge an organization that has achieved excellence. Maybe people, have a really favorable opinion of your organization, even if you're not able to help them. Maybe they just feel like you were really compassionate in terms of how you serve them. Whenever you think about what that looks like for you, what excellence looks like for you and for your team and for your community, then go out and see which organizations, and again, this can be for-profit or, nonprofit, that are modeling this excellence. Maybe it's customer service. Maybe you went to a really nice doctor's office and you loved how they handled you from the time you walked in the door to the time that you left. Take inspiration from that and then see, how you can tweak that in your own organization and kind of make it your own and adopt it as your own. And something to think about too is just the fact that when you think about a group that's like Chick-fil-A or a group that's like your doctor's office that you might be referring to, it can be overwhelming sometimes to think about, well, that's a really big organization, or that organization has 1,000,001 staff members, and they have really great, brand recognition. But think about how you can scale up from where you are to get to some degree of where you would like to be. Okay, so you can start with where you are and just little by little, incrementally implement things that you would like to have in your organization that would make you excellent. So something else you want to evaluate is how can our organization deliver superior customer service that exceeds expectations? Again, think about times when you've received really, really great customer service. What was it about it that made it so great? And then try to implement that into your organization. What are the relevant conditions in our service area, and what are our viable options for developing alternatives? So now this is something that's really important to consider because there are going to be some conditions going on that are going to challenge your ability to deliver your services in the way that you would like. So for instance, it might be the case that you have been sourcing your program participants from a homeless shelter or a transitional housing facility, and that facility might be getting defunded. If that is the case, how is that going to impact your ability to source your program participants? And what is your alternative to sourcing those folks once you no longer have that within your environment, within your service area as a resource for you? So think about all the different conditions that may not in any way be directly related to your organization that so might impact your work. So something else you want to think about is what type of community economic development activity should your organization undertake given the current economy? So right now we are in a period of recovery from the COVID-19 public health crisis, and there are quite a few grant opportunities for organizations that are working in the field of providing relief and recovery for folks who were impacted by COVID-19. If you would like to do affordable housing, there's money being poured into affordable housing as a result of the pandemic. If you want to do workforce development, there were so many folks that lost their jobs that a lot of federal sources and philanthropic sources, different foundations and private institutions are funding groups that can do workforce development. So it really just could be anything, but if you have an idea of what community economic development initiatives you would like to undertake, you can then start looking for dollars that might support that. And of course, like we said, it is based on what your program participants have identified as a need and communicated to you is a need, because you have to make sure that once you obtain those dollars that you've gone after, you will actually have the program participants to back it up. So that's just something to think about. Something else when you are doing an evaluation is who should be your strategic partner. So maybe you've been doing your program for a couple of years and you're like, we really could take this program to the next level if we partnered with our local hospital, or maybe our local school district, or maybe not even a school district, just a school. Maybe you can't partner with the whole school. Can you partner with an after school program? Think about who your strategic partners could potentially be, and then how you can best partner with them to serve your program participants. So a lot of times with partnerships, people think of that, going back to how we were talking about competition, as it being something where it could potentially be a threat. But really, a partnership, when done correctly, is an opportunity. And what that provides for you is a chance for you to have a collaboration and a mutually beneficial relationship. And so, what that might have to look like is identifying where there is a gap in service, and then you fulfilling that gap where the other people fulfill, your other partner might fulfill some aspect of that service. So that's usually one of the ways that you can have the most optimized partnerships is when you don't have an overlap in service and when you don't have a duplication of service, but where maybe you're replicating a service that they offer in an underserved group that they're not able to, for whatever reason, serve, or maybe where it's, you're serving the left side of the street and they're served the right, and then you all meet in the middle to share resources. Whatever that looks like, think about who your strategic partners can be. And those can be your partners in terms of delivering services. You can have shared administration partners where maybe, there is a nonprofit up the block and they have a receptionist and they have an HR specialist, or they might have somebody else who they're paying. Even if it's just office space that they're paying for, how can you all collaborate? If you can move into their half empty office and offload the cost of you running your half empty office, and you all just put all of your resources together to have one fully staffed and occupied office, then everybody wins. So just think about all of the different ways that you can have partnerships for every aspect of your program. Think who could be a partner for this. It goes beyond your financial partners and just people who you might be asking for money. Who could be your transportation partner if you have a summer camp? Who could be your meeting space partner? Maybe you have a class going to teach financial literacy. Could you meet at the local church instead of always paying, a hotel to have your meeting? Or could you go to the local library? What could you do? Who can partner with you? A lot of these groups are also interested in making partners and partnerships. And then also it looks really good to have collaborative partners whenever you go after grant funding or any other type of philanthropic funding. So something else that you want to think is what systems or policies will hinder your high performance at your organization? So it might be the case that you have envisioned this really awesome project that's going to provide, let's say it's going to provide transportation for kids who maybe are outside of a bus system for their school or something. Okay, well, what policy or system might hinder you being able to achieve that in your program and in your organization? Well, does your insurance cover you being able to transport kids? Do you have a risk mitigation policy? And if what does that say about you transporting children? Have you already made sure that you have volunteers who are able to drive the kids places and that you can manage risk appropriately? Maybe it's not so much that you have a policy in place, but maybe there's a system of reserving cars within your vehicle fleet that doesn't really work and isn't really conducive for you being able to go and deliver kids back and forth to their program. Whenever you're looking at kind of where you would like for your program to be and what you'd like for it to achieve, think about what systems or policies might stand in the way of that or might need to be revised to allow for your success. Something else that you want to think about is what areas lack clarity of direction and process. So maybe you are looking at your project and you're evaluating it, you're analyzing your data, and you see that you have a summer camp. And part of the summer camp benefit that parents get for enrolling their kids is that you're going to feed them with fresh produce. And you might see like, okay, wait a minute. Why are we doing this? Do they want the produce? Is the produce just rotting every week? What is the process for getting the produce to the people? Is it the best time of month for them to have it? Maybe they already have an influx of SNAP benefits, and maybe they're able to go to their farmer's market and they really don't want your produce. What is the point? Basically, number 36 is asking, what is the point of doing this? And what is the process that we're doing this for? If it's haphazard, you're probably going to find that you've got some haphazard results. And if it's not something that you thought through very carefully, you'll probably also find that the data that you collect is going to be random and not super helpful. So then for number 37, this is something that you really want to think about whenever you are doing an evaluation and when you are doing analytics for your program or your project. What areas consume too much time and too much money? It's something that, again, we can be kind of sensitive about, but truthfully, if you go through your budget with a fine tooth comb and you go through your billing statement with fine tooth comb, you might find that you have subscriptions that you don't really need to have, or you might find that you are paying for services that you don't really need to be paying for, or that maybe are just not yielding the results that you need for them to yield. Or it might be something where you can have your staff to kind of get trained and then, adopt those job duties. That might be something that can save you money. It's also really important to know when you need to outsource something. So the reverse of that, the opposite of that is that maybe you have your staff doing something that you would be better served to outsource to somebody else. If you have a staff member that is doing your graphic design and they might be really, really talented, but really, really slow, you are paying for all of the hours that they're at your job and they're sitting at their desk and they might be working on designing you a flyer when that's something that you might be able to go on Canva and get something that's pre-designed, or you might be able to partner with a local community college and get graphic design students to do it for you so that you could have your team member focusing on the job that you hired them to do, which might be something like case management or something else really, really great, program development, program management, going and fundraising, whatever the case might be. Once you have adequately documented what is taking up all of your time and what is taking up all of your money, then you can start to offload things and then find out where you can actually invest your time and money a little bit better. Something else along the same lines, number 38 is what software upgrades, additions, or changes are needed to enhance your organizational performance. So our organizations tend to waste a lot of time using software and technology that is out of date and that is slow and that causes our work to be delayed. If it's something where you're always getting hacked or you're always getting, your computer to crash, where do you need to invest your time and your resources to upgrade your technology and your software or to make changes? Where can you consolidate things? Where can you streamline and optimize those works that you have? So something else that you want to think about is what will give you a competitive edge. So when you are evaluating the outcomes of your project and you're looking at your program, The question that you want to ask is, okay, our organization is doing X and maybe we do it okay. But for us to get to that next level, we really need to be doing this. We really need to have more certified service providers or people who are licensed. Or what would really help us? If we just got one person who goes through and gets their licensure, then we can get interns here. And then we'll have more manpower that can help us to see more program participants. Whatever the thing might be, find that down, document it, quantify it, and then start working towards getting that competitive edge squared away. Something else you want to think about is what policies require updating to assure realistic and relevant management practices. We talked about this with earlier in terms of policies you want to have and different procedures you might have, what needs to be updated to make sure that you can have realistic and relevant management practices. So not only does that take into consideration what you have to do for program development, for program execution, what you might have to do for your service delivery, but also even just management. So if your management is going to be really important to the crucial to the success of your project and of your program, because they're going to be the ones who are responsible for making sure that the rest of your team has what they need and can do what it is that they need to do. And so something else you want to think about, like we said, in terms of standard operating procedures, that kind of goes back to you documenting your process, what needs to be effective and efficient and implementable that maybe you haven't quite documented yet. Make sure that you do that. And if you maybe have identified that you have some and don't have others, how are you going to go about developing that? Is there another organization that works like yours that has already developed that? One of the things that you're probably going to find is that Google is your best friend. So a lot of these types of procedures, you really don't have to develop from scratch. You can find another organization that does something similar. And then if you just run a Google search for all of the summer camps and what their pickup and drop off procedure looks like, they probably have something that is going to be similar to what you need that you can just take and make your own. And if so, do that. Take it, make your own, tweak it, and then see how it works. If it doesn't work, find something else. So something else you want to think about is your physical location. What changes are needed at your organization service locations to assure quality service delivery? So if you have an office where you see program participants, let's say maybe you're doing career counseling, but you know that the population that you serve, many of them may have issues with getting transportation. Is your physical office, your service location on a bus line? Can somebody get to it from going through public transportation? There are parts of our community where Uber won't go. It's too rural. Is that where you have your program? That's probably not the best place for you to have your program unless you're serving those people in that community exclusively. So think about changes that you have to make to just make sure that you are delivering your quality services to the best of your ability. So even something like, do you have a waiting area? If you require people to come and upon intake complete a whole bunch of paperwork, do you have clipboards for them? Do you have air conditioning when it's hot? Do you have, heat when it's cold? These are little things, but they really do impact the ability of your program participants to come and feel comfortable getting service from you, and then also to make them want to keep coming back. Do you have translators if you're serving a population that speaks a language other than English? Do you have people who can assist folks with filling out paperwork if you're serving a population that maybe has literacy as a challenge? Just something to think about, what changes are needed to assure your service delivery. And then something else that you want to think about, and we're getting a little bit towards the end of this part of our presentation, and we'll go on to the next part very quickly, is what types of software and equipment needs you might need for the next 5 program years. So something that you want to take into consideration is that when you're making an investment into a data management system or a software or a piece of equipment, it's something that you want to get that's going to last you for a while. It might look good to buy a cheaper laptop or a cheaper tablet or a phone that maybe doesn't cost all that much. But when you think about it, could I still have this phone in 3 years? Am I still going to have this laptop and it be working 3 years from now? If it's something that you have to replace it every year, you're quickly going to find that you're throwing good money after bad, and that sometimes it's worth it to invest in something that is a little bit higher end, just so that you can have it for longer. So think about when you're investing in your software, when you're investing in different systems you might use, is this going to be able to grow with you over the next 5 program years? And then you can reevaluate it and see if you need something else or if you need to scale down. Something else that you want to think about is how shifts in demographics and economic development might impact your organization. If your organization's mission is to serve people who come from one very specific neighborhood, who have these really unique challenges, and that neighborhood has been quickly gentrified, that's something that you're going to have to think about, because it's quite possible that your program participants who you have sourced from this one really specific neighborhood are no longer going to be residents of that neighborhood in 5 to 10 years or less. And so what is that going to look like? What types of moves are you going to have to start making to prepare your organization to be able to do transportation to where these people are now being relocated to? Or is it that maybe you decide that you want to fight the gentrification? What does that look like? How is that going to impact your organization? Maybe you serve an immigrant population, and unfortunately, the folks are being, deported. What does that look like for your work? These are all things that you have to take into consideration. Something else that you want to think about when you're doing your analytics and when you're analyzing your work and you're doing your evaluation is, what is the low-hanging fruit that can be secured with minimal capital investments that will give you an edge? So for instance, if you find that you have a parent night at your summer camp, and every single week you have parents who come to eat dinner with their kids, what is an edge that you have? You've got this captive audience. Can you get people to come in and provide different forms of community education? Maybe someone who can come in and talk about home ownership opportunities, or who can come in and talk about something else. What's low-hanging fruit? And then 2, something else is, what are the strategic locations in your organization for service delivery? So not only in terms of talking about your physical space, how it should be outfitted, but also talking about the fact that maybe you need to relocate entirely. Maybe your whole office needs to move across town. Instead of you trying to make the space you're in work, maybe you need a bigger space someplace else. Maybe you need a smaller space. Those are all things that you should be thinking about. Okay, and so now let's go back to our PowerPoint presentation. Okay. Whoops. Okay, hold on. I just clicked something I didn't click, and we're going to wrap this up. So now we're thinking about, once you've done all of that evaluation, how are you going to report that to your stakeholders? You can do a long report. Maybe that's going to be several pages long, in the form of a report where you're sharing all of the really cool things that you found out. Or maybe it's going to be a shorter format report where you just do an infographic, or you do a one-pager saying, hey, we had these many people come, these many kids came to our camp, these many, parents participated at parent night. We found their needs were X, Y, and Z. So we are responding by doing A, B, and C. Whatever the case might be, find some really neat ways that you can present that information. Like I said, Canva, CANVA.com is a really great resource. And if you are a nonprofit organization, they will actually give you a free subscription to their pro account. So you can do some really cool things with making presentations, with making graphics, with making videos, even all kinds of really cool stuff like that you can do. How can you share this information in social media? So even just to do a little graphic that says, hey, we served 67 people last year with our literacy program. Isn't that great? Congratulations to them. Share this with your community so that you can get more buy-in, you can get more groups that want to support you, more people that want to partner with you or want to donate to you because of you sharing all the great things that you do. Also, you can share it in the form of an e-newsletter, not only to share with your program participants, your staff, your board, and your funders, all the great things you're doing, as well as your legislators, but you can actually go ahead and let them know, like, hey, look at these super outcomes that we have because of the analytics that we collected and, the data that we have evaluated. Aren't we really, really cool? Don't you want to be our friend? You can send out postcards to people, and even as part of your promotional activities and your community outreach, to say things like, hey, look at this. This is so cool. We served 60 of your neighbors with home mortgage assistance and, rent assistance, eviction prevention. Come and get our service, whatever the case might be. You'll figure it out. Put it on the postcard. It'll be cute. And then something else that you can have is an end of program celebration. So maybe at the end of your camp, go through and share how many kids were able to improve their math skills over the summer. Or if you have something else that you're doing in terms of financial literacy, how much were people able to save over the 3-month period that they were in your workshop? All of those things are things you can do. As well as most of us have some type of smartphone, and these things have really cool apps to help you make promotional videos. Okay, so with that being the case, are there any questions that we did not address that you might have? What questions can I answer for you as it pertains to program evaluation?
Nothing right now. That's a very exhaustive list. I'm looking forward to getting that. That's great. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. And I know I was speaking quickly. I didn't want to take up too much of your time. I think I planned to have you for until 3:30, but I want to let you go a little early. So if you think of any questions, then you can contact us using any of these cool methods. Our website is alliancegpw.org, and our contact information is located on there. And we will be sending you all of this, as well as this list, as well as a recording of this video and some of the other resources that we mentioned momentarily. And we thank you so much for your time and hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. You as well. That's an amazing list. Thank you so much.
You are so welcome, and good luck to you in evaluating all of your programs.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Take care.
Take care.